Welcome to the country, where we do country things, and on today's video, I'm going to bring you guys along with me as I get set up for opening day of archery season here in Oklahoma. So today is the day before, and we are up in the Black Kettle National Grasslands, hunting on public land. And what I'm going to do is set up a couple of stands, one for an evening sit and one for a morning sit. And I'll just take you guys along with me as I set these stands up. I'm putting these stands up in familiar places where I've hunted over the past, 30, 40 years, however long it's been. I've hunted up here all my life. I know this area like the back of my hand. I've spent years and years and years in the exact same tree. Just really familiar with this area and have killed a lot of deer up here. And I'm just going to go with what I know, what's familiar for right now, kind of get set up, and then I'll do some scouting as I go along. If something's not working out where I typically see deer, then I can go and move and scout other areas. So that's how I typically like to do it, is to get up here, set up a stand in familiar areas or in the exact same tree that I've killed deer out of multiple years. And then if that doesn't work out, we can go and do some scouting and found some other areas. So let me get my stuff together, get out to where I want to be, and I'll show you guys exactly why I'm picking these spots and show you the process of getting these stands hung. So just give me a minute to get out to the tree, and then I'll be right back. Okay guys, so I made it down to the area that I'm wanting to hunt, and this is the tree that I'm talking about that I've hunted out of before and actually killed deer out of before. And what this is a low point in a draw that comes to a piece of private property that the deer are leaving the public land and going to a green field to feed it at night or in the evenings. And this is a tree that I picked out. It's a really open tree. It doesn't have a lot of big branches. It's real easy for me to climb. I don't like to use climbing sticks or ladders or screw anything into the tree. I'm kind of an old school kind of a guy who just climbs the tree without any assistance as far as climbing aids or anything like that. I like to get in as stealthy as possible and get out without making a lot of ruckus. So I try to pick trees that I can climb really easily, that's close to where the deer are crossing the fence. So I'll take you guys and I'll show you kind of what I'm looking at here from a side angle. So you can see the tree here. Like I said, this is a small little wood lot, as you can see, and I actually just jumped 2 deer that were bedded right by this tree when I walked in. So there's a lot of deer sign here. I actually seen a couple of deer laying down right under this tree as I walked in, so I know the deer are using the area already. And just from years of experience and years of hunting up here, this has been a really good spot just over the years. But what you want to look for when you're picking a spot are the travel corridors, where the deer are traveling to and from. And right here is a perfect example of what we're looking for when we're setting up a spot, is a trail right here just like this. Let's get a little closer and I'll show you. You can see where there's been deer crossing under the fence here, going to this green field out here to feed at night. And you can actually see on the fence, there's actually some deer hair on the fence here where they've been scratching their backs on the barbed wire. So we know that there's deer crossing the fence, crossing under the fence here. So we're going to set up our stand. That's a little bit far of a shot. That's probably close to 30 yards. A shot that I can make easily. Kind of in between where the deer are crossing. So I've got access to this trail here. And also you can see, if you look down, there's a natural alleyway that goes right by the tree. So a lot of times what these deer do, they like to use corridors and take the path of least resistance most of the time. So they're going to use those open lanes to travel. And the deer a lot of times travel right by this tree just because of the ease of getting through here. And they like to cross the fence right there. So like I said, the reason I picked this tree initially was because of these reasons. That's been years and years ago. This has been a really familiar spot for me over the past several years, and one that I've had a lot of success bow hunting in over those years. So what I'm going to do is get this tree stand set up in here, kind of trim some limbs to make some shooting lanes. Obviously you want to trim as little as possible so you don't alert the deer that you're actually here. And then this one branch that goes straight up right there is where I'm going to hang the stand. So let me get the stand hung up, get everything set up, and then I'll be back to show you guys exactly what we're looking at. Okay guys, so I got the stand put up in the tree. Got everything trimmed that I think I need to trim. Maybe just one more limb out there to my left. So this is the vantage point that you guys are going to see tomorrow in the afternoon. I'm expecting these deer to come in from the east or come in from the north, and hopefully they come in and come by this particular tree that I'm in. So one thing that I do like to do is anytime I'm trimming limbs, making shooting lanes, I always want to pile the brush up like you see there, where I want those deer to kind of stop. So a lot of cases, when you trim these limbs, you can actually get the deer to come by and actually eat those leaves off of the limbs that you trimmed. So you can kind of position those deer where you want them a lot of times just by piling those up. You kind of where you want the deer to be standing when you take the shot. So it's always a good practice to pile those things up where you expect the deer to be or where you want the deer to be. And a lot of times they'll veer off course to come to those fresh leaves, and you can get a shot at them, you know, kind of exactly where you want. So that's why I got that piled up there. And then you look off to my right, I've done the same thing there with that pile of trim. You see right there, that's about, 10 yards away. And if a deer comes from my right, hopefully they'll stop right there and give me a shot right there at 10 yards. So there is stand location number 1. That's going to be an evening stand. We're trying to catch the deer coming from their bedding area out to a green field out here to our south, which is private property to the south. So we're kind of hunting pretty close to the property line here. So we're going to get down out of here. We're going to drive a few miles up to our morning location, get that stand set up there. So just give me a little bit to get over there. It's about a half a mile walk from the road, so it's quite a ways into that spot. And when I get there, we'll kind of explain what we got going on there. So just give me a little bit to get over there and I'll be back. Okay guys, so we've made it to where we're going to be hunting in the morning, and I'm going to be putting my stand up in this huge old bodark tree or horse apple tree. This thing is probably one of the biggest bodark trees that I know of in the area. probably planted back in the 30s during the Dust Bowl days. So I'm hunting another big, huge open woodlot. And the difference between the woodlot that I'm hunting for the evening and this stand is this is way back off of the road. We're probably a half to 3/4 of a mile into this section. And what the deer do here is they come into this bedding area from feeding at night, come through here and bed down during the day back here behind me in this thick kind of brushy stuff here to the north. So typically what I do is set up right here in this big tree, and then I'll have these deer come. A lot of times they'll come through this big open woodlot that you see, and hopefully they come within shooting distance of this this tree that I'm going to be getting in. So like I said, the key here is to pick this morning spot is to get way off of the road and way away from where the deer are going to be traveling to. And that way they travel and they get to you after you have plenty of daylight. If I was to try to intercept these deer back further to the south, it's the potential that they would move through before it got light enough to see to shoot. So the reason that I'm getting back in here this far is these deer aren't going to get here till 8 o'clock, 8:30, maybe even 9 o'clock in the morning. So it's going to take them a while to get to me, and I know that when they do get here, I'm going to have plenty of daylight to actually see to get a shot at them. So you can see this tree is another one that I picked out that's real easy to climb. There's not many branches that I'm going to have to trim, or really any branches I'm going to have to trim. The V there that you see that's going off to the left there, that's the one I'm going to put my stand in. It's going to be, you know, about 15 feet up. And you can see actually years ago, if you can get up here where you can see this, but years ago there's a branch right there that I trimmed. You can see my saw mark where I trimmed that branch off so I can see to shoot out to the southwest there where the deer come from normally. And this tree typically doesn't change much. I haven't seen it in a long time. I haven't been up here deer hunting. In a year, so this tree hasn't changed a whole lot. It hasn't changed a whole lot in the last 10 years. So it's pretty good spot, and we're going to sit here in the mornings and see what we can see. Easy access from the road to walk in here is another reason why I picked this spot. There's an old road that comes in. You used to be able to drive all the way to this woodlot before they closed the road down. So you can just, in the dark, you can just follow the old road right to this tree and not have any trouble finding it in the dark. And that's one thing that a lot of people don't like to do or won't do, is they don't like to walk in these places when it's pitch black dark in the mornings, especially walk in this far. I think one thing that makes me more successful than probably the average deer hunter is I'm willing to go to the extremes to actually be successful. And I'll walk in miles and miles. I'll walk in the dark if I have to, or whatever. A lot of guys, they don't like to get in this far because they don't want to have to drag a deer if they shoot one back a half a mile to their pickup. So you eliminate a lot of the possibilities that other people are going to disturb you, especially this is public land. There's absolutely no reason why anybody can't come and use this land. It's completely accessible to anybody. And the thing about it is that you have to pick these spots where maybe nobody wants to go, way back off in the woods somewhere, way back in the brush, where people don't really want to have to walk in and out of in the dark, or actually drag a deer a long ways to their vehicle. So kind of keys to success on public land. The biggest key to success that I believe is just being more extreme or more willing to go out of your way to get back to some of these really remote locations on public land that the average person is not going to want to get back into and actually hunt. So never really had anybody disturb me in this spot, but you always want to look around in other trees nearby, make sure somebody doesn't have a tree stand up already to where you're going to disturb somebody or they're going to disturb you. And I definitely don't see any tree stands and anything that I can see from here. But I'm just going to take a big walk around here, just a big loop here just for a second, and just make sure that there's no other tree stands up that I can't see that's close by that somebody else has already set up. And then that way I'm not disturbing somebody or they're not disturbing me, and I'm not wasting my time hunting a place that's already kind of been disturbed. So give me a minute to kind of look around, kind of scout things out here, get this stand up in this tree, and then I'll be right back. Okay guys, so I got the stand up in the tree. You can see I put it quite a ways up, just kind of the best spot to make the stand level and comfortable and keep me up out of the view of the deer. One thing I do want to mention is what I do is fairly dangerous. Like I said before, I don't use any kind of climbing aids, any ladders. I don't screw anything into the trees. This is all freehand. I climb this tree, I drag the stand up by hand. I do everything without any type of harness or safety devices. So I do not recommend people do what I do. It's just the way that I've done it for years. Even though I'm getting, obviously older every year. I'm 46 years old this year. I've been doing it this way since, I was in my early 20s. I have fallen out of a tree once before. I fell out of a cottonwood tree years ago, about 20 feet down to the ground. And luckily I wasn't badly injured, just a few bumps and scrapes. But, there's always a possibility that people can fall and get injured and even die from falling from trees. But that's, that's the risk I take, a personal choice that I make. And the reason I do that is I'm hunting on public land, and if I make it easily accessible to get to these stands, then I make it easy for people to steal them. So I want to make it as hard as possible for somebody who's going to come and see this stand. I want to make it as hard as possible for them to climb up and actually steal that stand. So that's the reason I do that. I do not recommend people do that. Do what you're comfortable with. Keep yourself as safe as possible and enjoy your hunt. But that's just the way I choose to do it. So I do want to mention that to people. What I've done now is just like I did on the other spot. I've taken some limbs out here and put them down for the deer. If a deer happens to walk by, I want that deer to stop at this pile of limbs here to eat these leaves. Kind of that helps with two things. One, it kind of steers the deer towards you, kind of makes them stop and give you a good shot. And another thing is it tells you whether there's deer in the area or not when you're not here. One thing you don't want to do on public land is put up a bunch of trail cameras to monitor your stand sites. Those will get stolen. You know, there's just too much of a chance that people come by and steal your trail cameras, so I never put trail cameras up. But this is just as good as a trail camera almost. If I come back in the morning in the dark and a lot of these leaves have been eaten off, then I'll know at least sometime between when I put the limbs down and the time that I got back, there was a deer come by here. So that's one thing that I do to monitor whether there's actually deer activity in the area, is see if these leaves have been eaten. Another thing that I like to do is I like to scratch the ground with a stick. So here in northwest Oklahoma, where I'm at on public land, it's real sandy soil here. So you can just take a stick and scratch the ground kind of in front of your stand. And then when you get back the next time, you can tell whether there's fresh tracks that walked here. So that'll also help me determine, you know, if there's been deer walked by my tree, because there'll be fresh tracks in the spot that I cleared out, just like that. So that's kind of two things I do to monitor whether there's deer activity in the area. Another thing I want to show you guys, if you're not familiar with the bodark tree or the hedge apple tree, here's a couple of the hedge apples that was on these branches, if you want to kind of get a look and see what I'm talking about with these hedge apples. And these are really good food for squirrels mainly. They like to get in here and get the seeds out. I have seen deer eat these with my own two eyes. I've seen them pick them up and chew on them. So I know a deer will eat these hedge apples as well. What I'll do, I'll just throw them in right there. One thing I did notice as I was kind of doing a little walk around, if you look over here, you'll see right here, there's some deer poo right here. It looks pretty fresh. It's maybe 2 or 3 days old, maybe. They're not even that old. It's still pretty soft and pliable. It's not green or anything, but it's pretty recent. So there's been a pretty decent sized deer standing right here at some point here recently. So that's a good sign. There's a lot of tracks in the sand, and it's hard to make out what those tracks are. A lot of times they could be deer, they could be coyotes, and all sorts of things. It's hard to make out the tracks in the sand, but I can tell you that right there is a deer track, and that deer is walking to the southwest. So right there's my stand set up with my stand there, and I'm 10 yards away from the tree, and there is a deer track in the sand. So I am confident that there's deer in the area. So that's a couple of things that you might want to try if you're hunting a public land and you want to try to monitor whether you have deer coming by your stand. Is just put some limbs out with some leaves and kind of gauge to see if they've been eaten. Make you a spot in the sand that's clear where you can tell whether there's fresh tracks or not that's come by since you've been here. And that way you can kind of monitor, you know, the deer without having to put up a trail camera that's potentially going to get stolen. So, okay guys, so we got the stands all set up. We're ready to go for the opening day of the archery season here in northwest Oklahoma. Appreciate y'all watching, and we'll be back.